Welcome to Fuel Podcast. I'm your host, Leila Ansart, leadership advisor and certified executive coach. On this podcast, you'll hear the stories of successful individuals and how they were able to overcome adversity by channeling strength from an internal driving force. My mission? Shine the light on alternate strategies that can move you from reactive to strategic thinking, from overwhelmed to motivated, and from burnout to balance, so you can move forward and over-deliver on your current goals. Let's dive in. Hello, and thank you for tuning in. On today's episode, I'll be talking with James Brinkley II, an intellectual property attorney out of Washington, D.C. in the United States. He was an IP attorney at IBM for several years before parting ways with the tech conglomerate to start IPGen, a startup serving those in the U.S. patent space. If you haven't heard of them yet, IPGen helps anyone drafting, prosecuting, or litigating patent applications, from the novice applicant to the seasoned patent attorney. James had a vision for everyone to have access to the patent system, furthering inclusion and not alienation. I'm looking forward to you hearing our conversation today, where James and I discuss making the patent process easily accessible for all, how he chooses to focus on small wins, and his startup journey so far. All right, well, welcome to the podcast, James. I am thrilled to have you on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I like what you're doing, getting people's stories out. So I definitely appreciate the time and the platform.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Well, James, everyone's just heard your bio on the podcast intro here, but why don't you kind of tell us in your own words some of the your own professional history? Where did you start out? Where did this idea for IPGen come from? And where are you today?
Okay. So it was a pretty, I guess a long road, dating back to my high school years. I think I wanted to start out being a computer programmer, in high school. And then I got into chemistry. So when I went to college, I started out as a chemical engineering major, switched to chemistry because I liked the chemistry aspect more than the engineering aspect of it. And I knew I wanted to be an attorney, a patent attorney. We had some people, some attorneys speak with us on campus about a path you could take, with a science hard background. You could go into patent law. So that piqued my interest from then on. So from that point, I knew I wanted to be a patent attorney. So I did what I had to do. I went to law school. I got my JD from New York Law School. Went and got an LLM from George Washington Law School in D.C. Started my career at IBM in upstate New York, where it was super cold. And so I started there, and I had a good time. I met some new people. Really started my craft. I really honed in on my craft. I transferred down to the DC area's office, and then actually when I was out on paternity leave for my youngest son, I started thinking, how could I do things that could better the processes that I'm doing at work? And so I started thinking about IPGen. That's when the idea was born. I really didn't start on it until, later after that. But that's when the seed was planted. I still have notes of, that time of writing and those dates, just to show myself, when the seed was planted. And actually, it took a little while to grow, but that's where we are now. We're preparing for our launch of our platform in just a few weeks, actually, and it's a busy time, but it's an exciting time. To me, it was a long time coming. Plenty of ups and downs, as I'm sure we'll get into later in this talk. But when you look back to see how far you've come in such a small amount of time, relatively, you can pat yourself on the back. It's okay to, be proud of yourself at times. You don't want to be boastful or arrogant, but you can sit back and smell the roses, so to say.
I love that. Yeah. And I completely agree with you. You know, it's funny. I think we mentioned this or talked about this last time we spoke. I think people who I term high achievers, those who aren't satisfied with the status quo, they're looking to innovate, they're looking to make the world better in some way. One of the
Right.
downsides of that is that we often forget to stop and celebrate the successes that we've had. And so I applaud you for realizing, you know, hey, this has been great. Like I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm making a lot of progress, and I can stop and enjoy that for a moment and give myself that pat on the back. I think that's a really good mental state to have.
Definitely, I agree. Even the small wins, all wins are wins, especially in the startup life. I learned that, through some of the ecosystems and accelerators that I've been in, celebrate each and every small win because sometimes you don't know when that next win will come. So it's to keep you going because there are going to be some valleys, so definitely.
Absolutely. What does celebrating look like for you, James?
So right now, it's really not, the typical, what you would think a celebration is, party, a bunch of pompous. It's really just internal to me. It's a feeling. It's a warm feeling inside. Even though that's kind of cliche, but it's a warm feeling that you get. And how you talk to people. So speaking with the people closest to me, they see a smile on my face, or just that excitement stemming from how I speak in regular conversation. It's just that it's small. It's nothing big. Um, I do plan to celebrate big. Once we launch, I do want to have something that marks that milestone. But even now, leading up to it, it's just a warm feeling inside for me.
You know, I like that you said that because I think, the other side of, okay, I need to stop and celebrate, right? If we're trying to
Uh,
switch our mental perspective is, okay, I need to go out to dinner or treat myself to something or, do a weekend away. And that's not always feasible, whether it's, because of resources or time or childcare or, the pandemic. So it's nice that you brought up that it's really more of a state of mind, and makes me remember the practice of gratitude that I'm sure you've heard about, everybody's heard about, and I'm sure, like many, you've probably gone through seasons of doing that more and doing that less. I know I certainly have, but I think that's really it's very much a synonym to say, okay, I got to celebrate the small wins. It's the same as saying, okay, these three things didn't work out today, but what's the one thing that did? And shifting your perspective to say, where's the win that I can celebrate here? Would you agree?
I definitely agree because this life can be lonely, and you can have 100 people around you, but it's still lonely to run a startup. So um, to not quit, because like you said, there might be 3, 5, 10 things that went wrong today, but the one thing that did go right, that's what keeps you going. That's what pushes you along. And if you constantly celebrate those small things, you will make it. You will make it to enough tomorrows that you will be great at some point doing something. Whether it's your company, your family, whatever you're doing, um, as long as you can keep pushing along, you have to find that within yourself. And sometimes that's hard for people because, for me, coming from my background, it's it's easy for me to quit and go back to the salary that I had because it's there. I can always do that. So what can I say to myself to say, hey, I know that's there, but what I'm doing is so much more worth it to grind it out, to push through, to get to a better side than even what I could get, with that previous salary and that previous life. So I do think we all need to celebrate those small things to keep us pushing along. It's better for yourself. It's better for you mentally, because mental health is a big topic now, and you have to make sure that you're good. So in case I have two small kids, so I have to make sure that I'm good and in a good headspace. So when I'm around them, I can still raise them in a way that they can excel in class, at home, playing, whatever they're doing. I don't want them to be hurt
Right.
by what's going on in my head.
Yeah. It's an important factor to keep considering. How do we show up with the people we care about around us?
Right.
And it really being in our control, even when the circumstances of our career or life or business are not so much in our control. How
Yeah.
we
It's
show
tough.
up is in our control.
It's tough sometimes. Sometimes
Yeah.
people see it on your face. You try to hide it, but sometimes it shows through. But you have to minimize those, times that it shows, and try to keep it to yourself a lot, and still give them what they need from you.
So you mentioned your background, coming from your background and feeling the need to really make sure you didn't give up. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you had to overcome and what that looked like in your personal life?
Right, right. So, just growing up in Norfolk, Virginia, fairly low income areas. So those areas, a lot of my friends and family were swallowed up by the circumstances. My mother had, and my father as well, but my mother, I lived with my mother full time, and she had a kind of a tight grip on my brother and I. She still let us go out with our friends and do things, but we know when it was time to come home, and so you know it, it was her doing that. It was luck. We were blessed to make it out, but those things really swallowed up a lot of people that I know, and I don't want to have to, experience those things again. I don't want my sons to have to experience those things, so that pushes me to keep going forward in what I'm doing now. And so, just coming from there, um, going to college, going to law school, it opened my eyes to different things. It was a different world, so I kind of had to get used to that, and it was a struggle at first, in a different environment, with different people around me. But I quickly learned. I quickly adapted to it, and I love it. I love being around different types of people because you get different perspectives of life, even at the job, different perspectives of work. Um, we all could have. It could be a room full of 10 people where we all have law degrees, but we may attack a problem differently based on our background. Not saying that one is better than the other, but those different perspectives make all the difference to make that great solution. And so, I definitely appreciate the struggles that I had, where I came from, because that's making me a better person now, um, especially with the people around me at this point in my life. So those were the things I had to overcome then. But going to college, so I did well in high school, top few percentage of my class. Went to college, started off great, but then I joined a fraternity. I tried to walk onto the basketball team. So, and it was a bunch of freedom. Like I said, my mom kind of had a tight grip on us. So now I have freedom. And so I have a class at 8 o'clock. I'm not going to that class. I'm going to
Right.
sleep in. So I had to overcome. I went through academic probation, academic suspension. I was suspended for a semester. But that stuff, after that happens, it wakes you up like, hey, I'm too good for this. This is only a small portion of my life, but it could dictate the rest of my life. So I need to get it together. And so I got through it, and but that was a difficult time because it took me a total of 8 years to finish undergrad when it shouldn't have. But I reflect on it. I don't regret anything. But it took during that time, people saying, "When are you gonna finish school?" Because they know that I'm equipped to, that I have the knowledge to do so. But it just took a while because I wasn't focused like I should be. So that's one thing that I had to overcome as well.
That's interesting. How do you think that experience and the self awareness that you have about that serves you in your present day?
Well, one, I don't want to fall back into a pit like that. So I'm gonna do whatever I can to not get back to that level, because it takes a lot to climb out of. And I didn't climb out by myself. I had people around me to help me, But so I don't want to get back into that pit. But now that grit that I got from climbing out, I can use that in everyday life, whether it be work, whether it be home, whether it be whatever. I think that grit is what separates a lot of people, from being good to great. We can all learn stuff. We can go to college. We can look up things on the internet now. We have a lot of resources at our fingertips. But that little piece that it takes to get you to that next level, that's not taught in the classroom. That's not taught from a book. And so I'm glad that I have that now, because I may have quit, the startup life by now if I didn't have that. Because there were some times that I'm like, man, I could just go back. But that grit and that perseverance allowed me to keep going. So I think that's the biggest takeaway from that point in my life that I can keep with me now.
I'm impressed when I hear you talk, James. I'm hearing resilience, fortitude, a really beautiful self-awareness, which I have to say is not always the case with people. And I think it's the first step to growth. Your ability to maintain your course despite the pressure that you felt from others, taking as long as you did to get through college. I'm sure that there were comments made to you,
Of course.
by people who cared about you and people who just saw you around campus a lot.
Yeah.
So the resilience to keep at it, and then that word grit that you use so perfectly. I think it's interesting to say, here's somebody who's starting a brand new innovative product, a startup, and has been through challenges of his own and is committed to making this come out, making it come out and making it work and serve the world in the way that you have your vision of it serving. I commend that. And I think it's important that we stop, like kind of going back to our first conversation, celebrate the small wins. I don't think any of those words are small, by the way, but just to go back to that topic, to be able to look at yourself in the mirror when the going is difficult, when the challenges come up, and to say, no, this is who I am. I'm resilient. I'm full of fortitude. I've got grit. I've been through some, what before, and you know what? It's my podcast, some shit before. I'm saying it. First episode where I used my real language. Yeah. So, but I think it's important to recognize that when we've been through some of those challenging times, we get to bring all of that forward with us, and it serves us in such a deep way. It makes me think, I love the visuals that pop into my head. They crack me up half the time, but it makes me think of, one of those superhero costumes, uniforms, whatever you want to call it, where the person, is their ordinary self. And then they have that moment where they say, okay, it's the time. I watched Spider-Man recently with my daughter. It's the time for me to put on that costume. And the first time he enables the extra features in his mask, and all of a sudden his eyes can see all of this data that he couldn't see before. That's kind of how I picture these lessons that we've learned from experiences in our life. I put, you put it on like a pair of glasses, and you can say, I can look at this current unfortunate and pain in the butt circumstance through my regular eyes, or I can put on those glasses of resilience and grit, and I can say, no, here's all the lessons I've learned in the past. I'm putting them on, and I'm seeing this challenge through that. And it reminds you of really who you are, who you actually are. Not who you want to be, but who you are, because you've already overcome so much that it gives you that confidence to say, no, I can do this one too, step by step, and keeping focused on the little wins, like you said earlier.
Right. Yeah. You have to stay in the moment. A lot of people dwell on the past too much, and a lot of people look to the future too much. You have to have both, but too much of anything can be bad for you. And this is definitely a situation where, if you dwell on your past, if you dwell on your shortcomings too much, or even if you had quick great wins in the past, and you're kind of, kind of resting on those laurels, like that can stop you from, pushing forward and maintaining that or going to greater heights. Just like if in the past you had challenges and things, and if you dwell on that, you won't be able to get out of it and, and do great things in the future. And if you look too far ahead, same thing, like you can see, but it's good to have that vision. You need vision. I have vision of where I want my company to be now in the next 5 years and 10 years, but I don't dwell on that vision. You have to focus on what you're doing right now, learn from your past to help better your present to make for a great future. I think those are the steps that you can do, to make that happen and to continue on a path of an upward trajectory. So I really think that people, when they do it that way, the sky's the limit for them.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, I would agree. Speaking of your vision, you shared with me what got you so excited to start IPGen and how you could see it revolutionizing the everyday person, the everyday innovator. Why don't you share that with us?
Okay. So yeah, so my, what they say is your why. My why for doing this is kind of twofold. I want to help the little guys be able to be on an even playing field with the bigger guys. The startups, the individual inventors, to be on the same path with the Apples and the Googles who have unlimited resources. So that's one. But also, I don't want to alienate the bigger guys. They started off as little guys, so I want to be able to, help their bottom line, to help them continue to grow, because a lot of them do reach back to help the smaller guys in some capacity, whether it be an accelerator, if they're investing in their company, they may acquire their company and then bring that whole team on to work. So you don't want to alienate these bigger companies, and so my goal was to make something that both sides could use, and use well. And so that's how my vision for IPGen came about. And we're building a platform that anyone involved in the patent process can use. And so, as we started building it, if you look back a couple of years when I actually started, it's totally different now because we learned so much of what different types of customers would want and what they would need. And so we constantly iterating our platform, our tools in the platform to be able to fit the needs of these different types of customer segments, which sometimes they vary hugely. Like an individual inventor definitely don't have the same needs as Apple. So I had to really sit down and make sure that everyone's needs were met, and that's what we're doing. My goal is to have everyone involved in the patent process, starting in the U.S., but then expanding to other patent sufficient companies. Countries, but to have everyone involved in the patent process on one platform, and this will help everyone all around. We say we're connecting the world through innovation, and so we have a social network aspect in our platform. We have a collaboration aspect, so you can go through it by yourself. You can connect with other innovators in a similar space who may have already drafted patents similar in that space to yours, and you can connect and they can guide you in that way. Or you can work with an attorney who has years of experience and can get you, over that line. So however you want to go in that journey, you will own your journey. You will own that process. And then attorneys, in turn, you have a platform where every potential client is in one space. Who wouldn't love that? Now you have to market to this place, to that place. You can focus here on this platform. So it helps everyone throughout the process. we have tools from the beginning of the process all the way through the end, all the way through the maintenance of the patent application. Well, maintenance of the patents once they're granted, status tracking. So everything you need will be within this platform.
I have to say, I told you before, I did a very short term job in college where I was a transcriber for a patent attorney in media
Hmm.
PA, if anybody knows that area of the world. But I learned, so much as a college student about what goes into the patent process. And I'll tell you, as someone who does not have a patent of my own, it is extremely confusing. So for
Yeah.
those of the listeners who may not be aware of what's involved, give us the high level view of expense typically that's involved. When you are as a single individual, you've got a great idea, you want to innovate a product or you've come up with a widget of some type. What does that look like in the traditional path versus what you're putting together with IPGen?
So yeah. So in the traditional path, hiring an attorney, and these costs differ. If you go to a big law firm rather than like a boutique or a small law firm, but not too much. But a typical application that you're going through, it could be anywhere from a few $1,000s, around 5 to 7, up to like 20, or more than that. On and on the average, you might spend between 10 and 15, $1,000 on a patent. And so most people can't afford that. And then it becomes lack of capital equals lack of IP protection, which equals a lack of getting investors, which equals a lack of moving forward and you closing your doors. And so I feel like this platform will be able to keep more doors open, will be able to push more companies forward in that way because the cost, it's an archaic system that we have. It doesn't change often. We're not saying that you don't need attorneys because they're valuable. I'm an attorney myself. I wouldn't dare say that people don't need attorneys. But some people are knowledgeable, are smart enough to go through the process alone. Um, some people can go through a lot of the steps by themselves, and then need an attorney to get them on the rest of the way. So then that limits the cost going forward. But with our platform, let's just say if you're on the platform for 3 years, which is the typical 2 to 3 years from start to finish of a patent application, you would spend only a couple $1,000s as opposed to the 15. But in that couple $1,000s, you can work on as many applications as you want. So let's just say if you just did one, let's just say 2,000 versus 15.
Right.
But if you did five, 2,000 versus 15 times five,
Right.
so once you start doing more applications on the platform, your increase in savings increases exponentially. And so
Right.
that's what we're trying to push. Like, you don't have to pick that one invention and do that application. Now you can pick the one invention and the little ones around it that may end up being more valuable than the one that you thought. And you can work on all of them at the same time and still, have that savings, that cost savings. So I think it'll be huge for access, access to the patent system as a whole. It will bring together different classes of people. How they say the haves and the have-nots. Um, it'll allow them to all realize that patent protection to allow their companies to grow. And I'm excited about when we launch later this month that
Yes.
people can really see how it will benefit them and start a new wave, in this patent system. But yeah, I'm excited, and it's definitely going to benefit everyone involved.
That's wonderful, James. Thank you for explaining that for those that aren't familiar. I know it's the kind of thing that can just be intimidating, right from the get-go. And
Definitely.
I think your platform is going to really take the guesswork out of it, similar to Wikipedia does for
Right.
a lot of other, projects and things that people want to learn about. This is going to be updating like you said, a very archaic system. So it's bound to be of huge value to individuals. What do you need right now? What does you and the IPGen team need that our audience might be able to do to support you in your launch? And for at the time of the recording, we're early September. This episode's going to launch in the next few weeks. So you'll
Mhm.
still be just a week or so away.
Okay. So to the audience, just just spreading the word. If you know anyone who may need, a patent or that type of service, definitely tell them about IPGen. Send them to our socials. Um, Send them to our website. Send them to the places that they can see what we're doing. By that time, around that time, we'll have posted our launch event. We're gonna do a launch event over Zoom, so it it can be reached out further. And so we're gonna invite potential customers. We're gonna invite potential investors, media people. So it's gonna be a big event over Zoom. But I want to make sure that it's over Zoom so we can reach those who can't come close to us. And I think that would be how the audience can help. We also just released our docuseries. It's kind of a it's kind of leading up to our launch. We're releasing one episode per week up to launch. This week we released the first two episodes because it was a part two to the first episode. But it's really going. It's talking about our journey. How we started, the ups and downs. You'll hear more about the ups and downs, um, the accelerators and the organizations that helped us stay afloat and to grow, and also like the race to launch, like this hectic, chaotic time right now where you don't see that, but if I had if I still had hair, I might be pulling it out. So it really lets you know about us as people, about us as a company, and why you can trust us to make sure you get that that IP done and done right. So yeah, I definitely I can't wait to meet the audience, to meet the customers as they reach out, as they look and and see certain things. But yeah, it's coming, and just get the word out there.
Where can we find the docu-series, James?
Right now, it's on YouTube. I post certain things on my socials, which I believe will be attached to the podcast, but it's on YouTube. I'll provide the links as well for that. But the series is titled IP Genius, and then we have 6 episodes. Two launched already this week. If this is going to air in a couple weeks, so we'll probably
Yeah.
have 4 to 5 episodes launched
Okay.
by the time that the audience sees it.
So search IP Genius on YouTube to find that, correct?
Right. Right.
Okay. And then your company website is ipgen.io, correct?
The IO. Yep.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be putting all of those links in the show notes. So if you're listening on your favorite podcast channel, you can certainly find that in the show notes. Or if you're on our website, you can find it there as well as a full transcript of today's podcast recording. James, this has been really enjoyable. I'm excited about your upcoming launch. I'm absolutely sure of the success.
Thank you.
As we close up today, tell us a little bit about who you are personally. And I always like to ask this fun question. Besides who you are personally, pardon me, besides who you are personally, tell me about one person that if you could have a conversation with, they would be at the top of your list, dead or alive.
Okay. Um, the one person recently passed away. It would have to be Kobe Bryant. He's the reason I wore number 24 when I played. I just like his work ethic. I like how much he put into the game. But more so than that, after he retired, you really got to know him as a person, as a dad, as someone who wanted to affect change in the community. He was big on women's rights because he had all daughters. So, just to sit down and pick Kobe's brain about, I'm sure he had valleys as well, but you didn't really see a lot of those because he was in the lab working and working and working. And when it came to the public, all you saw was greatness. So, like, I want to talk to him and be like, how did you keep going? What really drove you to want to be as great as you were? Because, in essence, I want to be as great as I can be, while I'm here. Yeah. We all don't have a long time to be here, as his life was cut short a couple of years ago, and so I just want to affect the most change with the most people while I'm here, and I think he would be a great person to speak with to see how to do that, and in that way. So yeah, Kobe Bryant, definitely.
Thank you for sharing. And then I know you're a dad yourself. You mentioned earlier you've got 2 boys and you're a husband. Tell us a little bit more about who you are on the personal side of things.
Outside of the company, I still enjoy playing basketball. Before the pandemic, myself and a few guys, we used to get up and play at 6 in the morning a couple days a week, just to keep it going. And, since the pandemic happened, I really couldn't get out there much, but I'm about to get back out there and start playing. I know I can play for a while, but not to the level that I used to because I'm getting up there, but I'm finding other sports now. I started playing golf a bit. As you can see the clubs in the background. Yeah. Trying to find other things. I dabbled in tennis a bit, but just other sports to keep my body going as I continue on in life. So I'm a huge sports fanatic. I eat, some candies. I like Swedish Fish. I'm a Swedish Fish connoisseur. I have some on my desk right now.
Okay.
So it's those things that, like, little quirks that you have. So yeah, people probably don't know that. Coffee. I'm a two coffee cup drinker per day. I try not to go over 2. And most times I drink both of those in the morning, and I'm like, I need another one, but I say no. But just things like that. But family is super important to me. So everything that I'm doing, I do with them in mind.
That's wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've loved getting to know you, and I'm really excited to be cheering you on as you launch and we see the success of your organization. For everybody listening, if you haven't yet, go ahead and write down, jot down, text yourself, or just get on those socials and go to IPGen.io to check out James's company. Check out his docuseries on YouTube. And like I said, we will include the links to his other social channels so that you can reach out to him if you'd like to connect in the show notes. Until another conversation, James, I wish you the best. And thanks again for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. You're doing great things.
Thanks, James. This podcast is brought to you by Leadership Impact Strategies. We help managers to become effective leaders so they can navigate uncertainty and create highly successful outcomes for their organizations. Like what you heard on today's episode? Come on over to our website where you can grab your free checklist for holding an engaging team meeting, whether it's virtual or not. Find it and other free resources at www.leadershipimpactstrategies.com/resources. Finally, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts so you'll be notified when a new episode of Fuel Podcast drops. Until then, I'm Leila Ansart, and here's to you finding the fuel you need today.